Presides over this meeting is asked that I conduct. Thanks for coming, everybody, especially those people that came from a long way. Thank you. And hopefully the next few hours our equipment will work and we'll be able to create some good memories that will go for generations to come. So we like to ask, we have a video set up for the little kids down the room, and we just like to ask the kids, please don't go in all the offices and everything. We'll just go through and shut the doors. If you guys can go like in the kitchen or the bathroom out there or down in that TV room or come in here, then that'd be good.
Don't play in the parking lot, probably, right?
And don't play in the parking lot. Don't be running around outside. Okay.
Can the kids go?
You have a blessing on this?
Yeah, we gotta have an opening prayer, and I think Uncle Paul ought to get that. Would that be all right? Sure.
Should we get all of the little kids who want to leave? We've got a room back there set up with a movie.
Yeah, and I just wanted to announce while everyone's here, you probably already know this, but these pictures that are around here are all from Bear Lake, and Missy took them. Cool. And the Sawmill site, and so is that beam. Missy is a looter. He looted that beam from, but they looked like they were going to bulldoze it anyway, so.
It was already taught.
Yeah. Okay, so do we want to, is there a volunteer to lead the kids up to?
I will.
Okay, follow Aunt Gina. She's going to take you up there.
Hey, I'm Hayden.
All right. Now, see how that said hello? Hello. Okay, we are going to attempt to get this recorded, so I would ask you guys, well, when you get talking, if you guys will pass this back and forth kind of like a microphone. Maybe you don't need to do that, but I'm not sure how good the microphone. Yeah, when we get to that, we'll do that. So we've got a little bit of an agenda here.
Get out of the screen.
Yeah, you don't need to do it right now. You can back over here if you want. Or sit.
No, that's good where they are.
Okay, Brother Britton.
Let's make this a clean fight.
Brother Britton is, Marshall Britton is a good friend of our family. He's a good man in our stake here, and he is also a big-time genealogy guy. And so I asked him to come and do a 5 or 10 minute presentation on some Michelson genealogy, and then we'll go from there with our presentations.
Thank you. Well, I already know a lot of you, I don't know which ones, are really into genealogy. Because you gave me what, a couple hours notice, John?
Yeah.
A couple hours notice?
Yeah.
In a couple hours, I was able to find out there's 33 family trees started. Some of them are pretty old, some of them are like obsolete. They quit working on them for a reason. But we got a new one, started right here. See if I can finish this off. There you go. And so you got a new one right here, which what I like to do is just start it off with I put John in there and then his dad, and in the 2 hours I got 72 people lined in it, and verification of the genealogy is the big thing. And how many in here have done genealogy? This will show you. Okay, so if you've gone back far enough, you'll find out that some of you, somewhere in the tree, they decided they didn't like the way Michelson was spelled, so they spelled it differently. Okay, and so you got to be really careful because it is your family. Look at the names, look at the dates, look at everything else. This is just that they decided to change the name. It's not uncommon. Yes.
What was it?
You'll see. I think I can show it to you.
Okay.
I'll show you the actual website. It's one family in particular. It's not a Michelson family. It's a branch. So it's an ancestry type branch, and they changed the name spelling. But the names are still correct.
To protect the innocent.
Maybe. I know. I found out when Mom passed away. I found out that her maiden name was Copeland, and all my life I knew it was spelled with a D on the end. But before she died, maybe about a month or two, she told me that it did not have a D on the end. It was just an N. That her mother, when they got divorced from her dad, hated him so bad, didn't want any connection, so she added a D. Now, that was like a deathbed confession, and I really wanted to verify this. So I went back and I pulled my mom's birth certificate, and there was no B.
Wow.
So she was telling me the truth, and then so I let everybody know. And there's some people don't want to know. Some people grew up knowing, like all my nieces, nephews, and her siblings from her side, her brother's side. They grew up knowing there was a D on it. They didn't want to know that now, because everything says D on the end. It'd be like change everything, forget it. So there's a lot of people who don't want to know. Okay, so this is just one family. This is just one head of household that I printed out for you, just to show you how it comes up when you use this particular website. This is the head of household on here is Jacob Michelson. Came from Denmark, Strasbourg, Denmark, and he has several wives and a lot of children. You can see, which I'm going to leave here, because you can only get this one time like this, with one sheet like this, because after you combine it and put it in your tree, it merges things, so you don't have duplication. You don't want the same name showing up 5 or 6 times. So I printed it out specifically so you can see how it comes out, but when you merge it, it stops the duplication, because it starts showing this husband over again and stuff like that. A lot of relatives. So anyway, I know I've had verification. I've had John here take a look at some of the names so he can see. I think you said it was it Suzanne Michelson? So that's this wife, and then there's the children, and then it's her sister, right? Who's also one of the wives. Yeah, I think it's Susanna. And then
Elizabeth.
I saw Elizabeth already. That's up top. See, but as you go through, you can see all the different wives. I thought I saw Susanna. Your son pointed it out. Maybe he is. So, but nonetheless, there they are.
So
Now-
Ancestry.com is a good website.
It's a very good website.
New family search and all.
There's
the
all
different
kinds, okay? What you don't realize is this is actually owned by the church. But there's a lot of things that the church owns and they don't let public. The reason being is because people have a lot of animosity against the church. So rather than let everybody just know, they just don't. It's not a secret, you can find out, but they just don't publicize it. Okay? So, and then I also want to let you know, yes.
And don't they charge you to get?
That's what I was going to go to. This is expensive. This is probably one of the most expensive sites there is. Okay, there is a way around that. And I work with Family Search in Salt Lake, and they actually told me the way around it. So the way around it is, it's still expensive, but you take a pool, look at the people you have in here. If everybody donated $10, you could buy the worldwide access for maybe 2 years, and everybody uses the same username and password. And no matter where you are, there you are. You're working on it. Because you're working on one family tree. You know, it doesn't, so you only need one username, one password. And that's what a lot of people do.
Well, is this one the better one?
It is one of the better ones.
Well,
Reason is one of the better ones versus some of the other ones like, say, Path 4 and Path 5.2 and all those. They're kind of outdated and they don't merge well. This one here merges right into your Roots Web and all those other ones that you want to go right into and do if you're doing your work at the temple. And that's ultimately what we want to do, is do our work at the temple. So this one here just falls right into it. You can actually go from here, from your family tree, into the temple work, and actually set up for your paper and everything to do the temple work. Now, I've heard this over and over, especially on my wife's side. She doesn't need to do it because it's been done for years. And I believe it has been done for years because I think her great-grandfather was Eldon Tanner. Then they do his automatically for him. So what she doesn't realize is everybody's been doing that work. So all of a sudden you have a relationship that's joined the church and now is interested in doing genealogy, and they say, well, I want to do some genealogy, I want to do baptisms, I want to do this temple work. And they go in there and say, well, I think I'll do this one. Well, you got to block that from happening. You don't need people going in doing your family's genealogy temple work for 15 times. And that's what's happening. You know, there's enough of it out there that needs to be done, that hasn't been done. So you can actually go in there and search it. How many times has I seen Elder Tanner's baptism's been done? All his work's been done? 17 or 18 times. Because sometimes, okay, people grow up and they don't know what to do, don't know how to search it to see if it's been done.
Did you get the sense that our family line's been done or not, or
Well, I'm
what?
going to show you how you find out.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you're going to see. So this is
Okay.
this.
Okay, thank you.
That I'll just give to you. Now, if anybody wants a copy, he's got the copy machine. Now, how many of you are into doing the census, doing the indexing? Anybody here doing indexing yet? You heard about it?
I've done it before.
You've done it before, so you know kind of what it is. And you know we have the 1940 indexing coming up, right? In, I don't know exactly, I think it's like 56 more days. And so anyway, I wanted to show those that had not done it. Here's a 1900 federal states index. This is what it looks like before anybody indexes. This is the sheet, all right? And it's a unique sheet because right down here in the middle, it's got Michelson. And it's your family. This is the index, this is where they index off of the census of your family. And it's right here. And so if you had a magnifying glass, you could see it. But I'll leave that with him so he can show you. But anyway, when it's indexed, that scribble and everything turns out to be like this. So you can read it. Because this handwriting, if you've done any kind of stuff like that, it's hard to read sometimes. But now it's been read, it's been verified, and now it's readable. So you can start right at the top with the head of household. It tells you that it was Jacob Michelson. It tells you his birthday was February 1840. At this particular time, which is 1900 census, he was 60 years old, married for 30 years. Birthplace was in Denmark. Immigration that he came here was in 1863. He did enter through Ellis Island, which I was going to show you that. EllisIsland.com. You can go there. You can plug in his name, and it's going to come up right on the wall.
I didn't know that. So he,
Yeah, he entered through Ellis Island. Okay, so this is that snapshot that you have right here is this right here. That's what it turns out, and that's what it looks like. And then here's just a snippet where you can actually kind of see those names. This is actually a snippet that I took off the. You guys got hands on that. You kind of-
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then as they pass that around, this is what your family history looks like right now that I just did in 2 hours this morning. Okay, now, I'm going to pass that around this way. Now, so what you're looking at here is just the Michelson family tree, and it doesn't have an owner. It needs an owner. Okay? So when you start looking at it, you want to look at the whole thing.
These lights so you can see better.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Use this tree. Yeah, no, this got lots.
Did you see where it said Marston? Karen and I went to the Marston church there, the old Church of England, and went through the graveyard looking for any Barker's headstones, and they were all so weathered you couldn't hardly read anything. We didn't find anything there, but that's where the church they had to have gone to, is the little town called Marston, north of
Oh, I see, it's
London.
the town.
Okay, so you can see here how it works out. Since we got him started as the head of it, and then to his dad, then to his dad, then to his dad, and it keeps going like that. And it keeps going and going and going, and they can go massive. I mean, you have no idea how massive. I thought mine was pretty large, and it's nowhere near as large as some. I have 57,000 names of ancestry and extended family that I've researched. 57,000 names. I thought that was a lot. I found I found other websites and other family trees that have over hundreds of thousands of names. And they are very well done.
Marshall, I see that it says that Edna is living there. How do
Well,
you update that?
That's the thing. See, the reason that she's living right here is because no birth date or death date has been put in.
You have work to do.
No, this is a brand new website. You gotta realize that. This has just started. And this has only got information that you put in. You're the family. You're the makers of this. You can take the information that's here, like these little things up here. They're telling you that something's existing. You got to be very careful about these because they are accurate. They do tell you that there's information there. So I'm going to take one that has a little flag right here. Well, let's start with John, because I didn't want to get too far ahead because I'll forget. So let's take,
And Marshall, I hate to say this, but we have this big agenda, so
all right.
this
I know
is
you told me
awesome.
not to go too much.
No, you,
Hey, don't feel bad, they even told us not to do it.
Okay, so anyway, here's a little section right here, okay? So this is what you can do to every single website. This is why it takes so long, it's so involved, okay? You can put this picture there, you can put a little story up here, you can put timelines, things of interest, okay? I heard so many wonderful stories just listening to that. Wow, I know this person, I was here at this time. Those are just things that people don't know you know. You think that you take it for granted. And those are the stories that you need to write and put on something like this. So later on, you may want to go up here and say, I want to publish a book. Together, a book is not so far-fetched. Let's see. So anyway, go back up. We'll go back to view the tree again. Same thing right here. Then you go over here. Now let's go to this little flag. 4 ancestry hits. So it tells you where they are. And it tells you a little something about what's going on. You have the 1920 census, the 1910 census. But Social Security usually tells you when they died. War records. And some of these war records are pretty unique to be able to read what they actually have to say, because you have an option. You can either click on this and just connect that information to him, or you can actually read what it has to say. I did that one time just to see what it said, and it was the last words of one of my cousins years ago that was in the Civil War. The last things that a corpsman wrote as he died.
Wow.
And it was a letter that the corpsman was writing to his father, telling him how he died in the Civil War, what his last thoughts were, and how he looked, and everything about him. It was pretty unique, and I had no idea that was even in that little snippet right there, because I was just going to hit connect like I usually do, and not look. So sometimes there's something there, sometimes there's not.
It sounds kind of like you were on the rebel side.
Well, I kind of grew up in that area.
Sounds like.
If you look at this picture right here, I shouldn't even show you this. See, I used to, before I came to Las Vegas, I did a lot of Civil War reenactments. All right, my granddaughter, that particular daughter right there, that's one of my daughters. She's 40 years old now. This month. So that's a long time ago. So, but I want you to see, there's so many things to look at, and you go here, family tree. Go back
Marshall,
to my
tell them the Rasmussen thing.
All right, I was going to get there. Your name, Michelson, wasn't originally always Michelson, it was Rasmussen. In Denmark, when you go back far enough, you'll actually see it. Before you came over in the ships, it was Rasmussen. And I did not find the story, although I know it's there in Denmark somewhere, but reading the translation from Danish into English is hard, because it's just difficult. I don't read Danish. And but the name Michelson came from the Rasmussen's wife's maiden name. Her maiden name was Michelson, spelled just like you spell it. And that's the name they took when they came across and started in the United States. But Rasmussen was the original name. There was another name that was also used. I forgot what that was. But if you go back far enough, it's there. But Rasmussen was the actual root family name. And so if you were ever to look for your coat of arms isn't going to be from a Michelson coat of arms. It's going to be a Rasmussen coat of arms.
Well, they would change their last name every generation and based on the father.
Yeah, I think in this case it was the father was a Rasmussen, and they took the mother's. And I don't know how that story actually works. I don't know why they changed it. So you might be actually right on that. But the wife was Michelson.
Yeah, when I look back, it was Rasmussen, and then before that it was something else.
Yeah,
Before
it
that
was.
something
Yep.
else.
Yeah.
Right.
It went like that, and
Well, that doesn't explain why they
I
keep
thought
their
they took
daughter's
Michelson
name.
because Rasmus opposed him joining the church or something.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? I didn't hear that.
It's very possible.
I can tell about that. Adam's research. Oh, you're going to tell a little bit about
Exactly. And sort of their famous landmark in the country, their sort of Statue of Liberty in a way, is called the Little Mermaid. It's a statue that's on a rock, and it was made about 100 years ago, And there are actually copies of the statue now. There's one in California, there's one in Iowa, there's one in Canada. But this statue, it was kind of interesting reading about all of the focus, sort of, I guess you call it vandalism. Had its head cut off 2 or 3 different times.
Oh my God.
Had its arm cut off several times. And a few years ago, somebody blasted it off of its base.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it
Why
was-
did they do that? What, do they
I don't
hate
know.
it so
They've been
much?
they've had paint thrown. I think it's just a
there.
symbol of the country, and it's very accessible. It's not like
They're the few that are not happy in Denver.
yeah. So, all right, a couple last things. Able skeevers,
Yes.
and
Were they found?
Audrey just made some of those this morning.
Were
That-
they originated?
It was said that that's one of their. I don't know if somebody there invented it or not, but it's one of their famous desserts.
What are they called?
And then here's a picture of a part of Copenhagen. Copenhagen is the capital of Denmark. I want to say it's a little over 1 million people. And a lot of the areas are preserved from some time ago. This section here, Nijhaven, was the home where Hans Christian Andersen lived. And it's preserved in a lot of places. It's a very touristy area now.
What's the name of it?
Nijhaven. I think that's just a neighborhood within Copenhagen. And then a couple of other famous things. Niels Bohr, the famous physicist. Jake, you may know something about him. And the famous comedy pianist Victor Borge. He comes from there. And the philosopher Kierkegaard. So they have some famous contributions to culture. There are about 4,000 church members there now to 5.5 million people. So very small population. But early in the church, when the missionaries went over, there were 26,000 members in Denmark, and 13,000 of them came over to the United States. So a decent number of the Danish members came over to the United States. And there is now a temple in Copenhagen. And it was the second temple that was a converted existing building. After Vernal was the first one. But they took a church building that had been around for a long time and converted it into a temple. So there is a temple now in Copenhagen. And
I'll tell you what, these
I think
folks
that's
do
it.
not mess around on their country.
Yeah.
So that's my report on Denver. Questions?
Oh, look, can I tell you one other little tidbit? You know the Christmas that's at Temple Square that we've kind of adopted as sort of our symbol, of Christ is kind of our thing. It's not our thing. It's a Danish artist
That's right.
created that, and it's in Copenhagen. The original is in
Really?
Copenhagen, in a
Yeah,
church there.
that's right. I remember that now.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a smaller version of it inside the temple when you go in.
Oh, yeah.
In the entryway, but it's
Yeah, but when the missionaries, because my little brother served in Denmark, so if you have any questions or want to hear Danish, give him a call. He loves to speak it, even though nobody understands what he's saying.
It's a really dreadful sounding
It's
language.
Weird language.
I have to say this, we always get Mickelson sometimes and Michelson, and I met a kid on my mission that spelled it the same as we did, and I've always told it should be EN if it's from there, but he was from Denmark, and it was ON, and I said, is it Mickelson or Michelson? And he says, it's neither one.
Yeah.
I said, what is it? And he says, Michelson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
that's
is.
what Sven
I
said
said,
too.
I'll stick with Michelson.
all right. Well,
Thanks.
you guys want to just put the pictures back there. You can look at them afterwards. And I'm taking Mason. Is going to
Thank you.
Mason!
Good luck.
Did you say Mason?
Mason,
Yeah. Did you tell him you have a boy named Mason?
I do.
Yeah, we got a boy named Mason.
Mickelson's, and we can start recording that, or
Yeah,
we can do whatever we want. You guys want to skip to the memories, or?
Did you want me to tell what is the status of the land?
Yes.
I can say it in one sentence.
Yes.
It's national forest land.
Really?
And it always was. I talked to Conrad Michelson, who's in Bear
Yeah,
Lake.
I used to run
He
around
knows
with
you guys.
him.
Yeah. And he says hello.
Yeah.
But he lives very near Dry Canyon.
Isn't he incredibly old? Very funny.
But he said it's national forest land, it always has been, and that your dad got special permits to have a sawmill there, and that
I thought we always knew that.
I didn't
I didn't know that. And anyway, it's part of Curlew National Forest, I think. I would like to buy that land. I mean, if I had money, I would buy it. And anyway, I contacted the
Add it to your list.
like, the BLM to see if there's any possibility of
Huh.
I haven't heard back from them.
That's cool.
Very good. Well, I have our old Super 8 movies that I got put on this DVD. We were up there the day that we chopped down the tree,
Yeah.
and Dad videotaped all around the whole area of it. So I have that on my
Cool.
discs that I brought.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So we'll have to.
There's a tree that Thomas Michelson put TJM and Eldon James Michelson, and I think the Harlow Michelson had his initials on there, his little brother. And then we put our initials on it. It was big old quakey, and I went up there one year and it was dead. And I was afraid somebody was gonna run off with that, so I chopped it down, almost on top of my kids. A real lumberman I was.
With an axe in there in the movie, she's swinging away, and Dad's filming the backside.
I don't remember.
I have proof. I'll show you.
Oh, we gotta see that.
Well, Matt even said he put his name on that.
Yeah, our kids put the names on it. And anyway, I chopped it down, and then I cut the section out with the thing on, and then the bark kind of fell off. And I still got the bark, and I should mount that in a picture frame, and then bring it up and put it in your thing here. I was going to put it in the cabin, but the cabin might, by the way, the cabin probably, if we're going to keep it in the family, we need help, or it'll go.
Be selfish.
So, anyway.
So we might have an auction.
We might have an auction, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just take over payments.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, let's
Okay.
talk about happier stuff, but
No,
anyway.
I like it.
Campus happy.
We'll talk about, that's family stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so thanks, Missy. That was awesome. I've always kind of wondered that, what was going on over there. Okay, then we were going to talk a little bit about the Michelsons coming to America, but again, we got a lot to cover here. So do we want to skip right to the memories, or do you want to talk for a minute about
When's
what
lunch?
what happened when Rasmus came?
Yeah.
I know.
When do you
Well,
wanna
you're
eat?
free to dig in there. You're supposed to eat and
Oh,
munch and
okay.
just get fat and happy listening to this.
And
That's what we want.
the movies. I want to see the movies.
The Sloppy Joes are coming. They didn't get plugged in, so they're kind of not as hot as they should be.
Do you want me to,
now?
you want me to plug it in? They're
I
sitting.
plugged it in.
Okay.
Okay, well, we can wait till it warms up.
Okay.
You know, if somebody could tell the history of
Now,
Michelson's coming over here, it would be, great.
Are we or are we not going to follow the agenda?
well, I don't have the agenda in front of me. I thought the next one was, what was next?
Well, Adam was.
Yeah.
I thought that there were like several assignments, and then we were going to get into.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
It's
We
my-
want to talk about
I would like to hear that.
Jacob and Rasmus
Okay.
and how we came to
Let me get this recorder going here.
Yeah, record it.
It's-
Oh, that's a digital recorder?
Yeah, it's a digital recorder.
Now, is that recording too?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay, so if people, again, I don't
The
know.
mouths
if
of
the
two
mic is,
witnesses.
Talk into it.
Okay. I'll just put it right here and talk loud.
Okay, or not. Okay.
You hold it and
This child is one that
Hold it like
projects.
a microphone out.
We're gonna, Adam, this dictates onto my computer and transcribes a lot of it. So if you can,
Okay.
Hold it close enough.
Okay. Where's the mic on this?
Right
Okay.
there.
So a few years ago, I took a genealogy class at BYU, and my project was Jacob Michelson. And I did quite a bit of research. I visited the sites up at Bear Lake and talked to several people up there that are our relatives. There is a Dennis Michelson that lives up
there is.
there in Jacob Michelson's home right now. And I went to the archives at BYU, and they actually have a lot of history on Jacob Michelson at those archives. It's kind of a cool place. If you ever get the opportunity to go there, it's really cool. It's down in the basement of the library, and you have to have all this access to get in there and sign in and everything. But you go and see original records and manuscripts of pioneers that came to various places. Anyway, Jacob Michelson is one of those for which we have some original records, or at least some secondhand records. And I'll just start from the very beginning. So what I'm going to tell you is sort of a composite of all of the different sources that I gathered. And some of them are actually kind of conflicting. And so I'll just kind of pick and choose what I tell you. But I'm working with somebody who lives up in Brigham City, I think, who is working to put together a full history that's very detailed and compiled from all these different sources. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have a big written history that we can distribute to everybody.
Wow, awesome.
In the meantime, there are several pieces of that I can give to you guys, and there's a Facebook group that's very active right now. That's a Jacob Michelson Descendants Facebook group, and people post on it pretty frequently. Lots of pictures of Jacob and Susanna and Elizabeth and history. So it's,
What was the first wife's name?
the first wife was Nellie.
Nellie.
Nellie, okay.
So with that intro, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you the story. I know there are a lot of cultures where telling a story is very part of their culture, so that's what I wanted to do. So in 1839, on February 1st, Jacob Michelson was born in Oster, Egesborg, Kristo, Denmark. And he was born at 3.5 pounds, according to the records.
Really?
Yes, and he was born to a family that was very poor, and as you can see how remote it was, he never got an education at all, and it's possible that he was illiterate. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but he, at the age of 11, started working, hard labor, and most of the kind of work that he did was hired out. And eventually he became expert in carpentry and building and wheelwright work. And
Can you explain wheelwright work?
I don't totally understand, but I understand it's basically making wheels and truing them up and making them so that they're aligned and so forth for carts and stuff like that. So,
And that was a pretty good career back in those days.
I'm sure, and it says that he was very expert at it. So he was hired out for all of those different disciplines. So for carpentry, he might go to some other county and work for somebody for a few weeks or months, and then he might go and build a house or a building somewhere else and so forth. At the age of 14, he was made part of the Lutheran Church. I can't really tell if he was baptized into the Lutheran Church or if he just started frequenting the church.
That's the age where they do confirmation, so
Okay.
he may have been
So that may have been the
participating in
case.
confirmation.
But most of the records are pretty consistent that around 14 he was Lutheran. And then we know that he just continued working. He never really had any kind of, he stayed with the family but continued to hire himself out. And at the age of 24, he had an experience, which there are several different stories about this experience, but that introduced him to the church. And the one that is quoted by him, there was a granddaughter of his who interviewed him, and she quoted him in one of the records. We don't know if she made this up and then put quotes around it, or if it was directly from him, but it says that he stopped by on his way back from a job to visit with one of his friends. And one of his friends, as I guess is tradition, to have a bottle of whiskey at the table for dinner. He stopped by that house and the friend invited him to stay for dinner. And there was a bottle of whiskey there. And he had heard from somebody else that that friend had become Mormon. And so at dinner, he took a glass of whiskey. Jacob took a glass of whiskey and then poured another glass for his friend and handed it over to see what he would do. And then his friend said, "Well, I'm not actually going to take that. I've learned that whiskey's not good for me anymore." And he said, "Ha ha! So you have joined those lunatic Mormons after all." And the guy explained to him. He grabbed the Bible off of the mantle and taught him about the restored gospel. I don't think he had a Book of Mormon at that time, but told him about Joseph Smith and how at that time he had been martyred. He talked about it. And the records indicate that Jacob sort of gained a testimony at that point. He felt something as he was hearing about Joseph Smith, in particular about the martyrdom, that really touched his heart, and he felt like there was something special there. That same year, he came in contact with some missionaries and was baptized in, I think it was in September, and in a very icy pond. Apparently they had to break through about 12 inches of ice, and they baptized him there, some elders that were there in Denmark. And his family found out about him being baptized, and they disowned him. That's his father's name was Rasmus. And so you can perhaps infer that maybe that's why he didn't take the name Rasmussen, because Rasmus didn't consider him his son anymore. They said that they thought that he was possessed with the devil. But there are other records that indicate that his grandfather, who was Michael, was very supportive of him joining the church. And so the next record we have of his actual name is when he comes across and lands in America, and it's recorded as Michelson. And I think it was spelled with an S-E-N. And then later on in a census that I found in, I can't remember if it was Star Valley or if it was in the Bear Lake area, but it shows as Michelson with an O-N. And then from then on, it's Michelson with an O-N. I'm assuming from most of the research that I had done and the people that I had talked to that he may not have been the one to spell his name out on the census or on the records, that he just said, this is what my name is, and the person just wrote it down.
Now, Adam, that was in 1863, I understand.
That's correct. 1863 is when he came across.
And I was just saying to Uncle Dennis that that's very interesting because that was in the middle of the Civil War, was it not?
That's true.
And so, you get kind of a feel maybe for
The
setting that he came in. And did he come into New York? Is that where he came in?
Ellis Island, yeah.
Yeah, Ellis Island is.
Okay.
And I kind of skipped ahead, but he did go through Liverpool, and at Liverpool he got onto a boat called John Dubois, and it was there that he first saw Nellie. And they didn't introduce themselves or anything, but they made eye contact, and the story goes, all of the records really romanticize the interactions with Nellie. That it was love at first sight, that they both loved each other immediately, but never expressed their love until much later when they met up in Brigham City. But anyway, that was where they first saw each other, and then Jacob actually hooked up with another Danish family that was going across, and he stayed with them through Liverpool over the ocean, and then helped them to get teams of oxen and cross the plains. And so he kind of became a stepchild to that family, and worked with them and helped them to set up shop when they were ultimately sent by the First Presidency to go and settle up in the Cache Valley area. And they settled in Hiram, and that's where he started his work with this gentleman. I think they were carpentry. They put together a carpentry and blacksmith shop up there. And while he was working in that shop, that was when he found out about where Nellie was and that she was in Brigham City with her family. And so he actually made quite a few trips between, and there are lots of romantic stories about this, about him walking on foot to go and visit her and making it there in like a one-day trip or something like that.
So she was English? Was she from...
No, she was Danish as well.
Oh, she was too. Okay.
Did they go on the same boat together or cross?
Yes, they did, but they didn't really have any interactions
Did
other
they
than
cross the plains at separate times?
they were
In
separate.
separate companies?
They may have been in the same company, but there's no indication that they were like in the same cart or anything like that. Anyway, so they sort of, I guess, courted this long distance courting, him going back and forth between Hiram, which is kind of south Cache Valley, isn't that right? And down to Brigham City. Ultimately, they got married, and they homesteaded nearby, and they had a couple of children shortly thereafter. And the second child was Jacob. They named Jacob Jr. And it was in that, and there's actually a big long story. I want to give you all of these stories, but I'm really condensing them all. But there is a long story about how when she was pregnant with Jacob, she was very sick and ill, and when she delivered, it was a very fatal experience for her, and ultimately, I'm really not giving this the justice that it should. It's a really amazing story, but ultimately she died, and Jacob died, and Jacob Jr. died, and Jacob Sr. was left with his first son, and who was about 3 at the time, and he was pretty much heartbroken over the whole thing, and became, some of the stories talk about him becoming kind of a hermit and not really coming out of his area. And
Now, Adam, did that take place in Bear Lake area, or were they still in the Hiram area?
They were near the Hiram area at that time.
So, is that child buried in, and is she buried in Hiram?
I can't remember where they are buried. I don't know if Jake knows that. Jake, do you know where Nellie is buried?
I don't know.
That would be a good question, a good mystery to solve.
Are we sure that they're not buried in the garden?
I'm not sure about that.
I don't think I've ever seen.
But I mean, they lived there later. I don't know why she would have. I mean, he would know. I mean, it's not like they would have her body exhumed. I would think.
So she's most likely in Hiram, in one of the cemeteries there.
They didn't live in Hiram. I know that they moved away from that family that he was living with and settled somewhere else, and I just, right now, I'm not remembering. I did find out the name of the place where they lived, and it was nearby, but it wasn't Hiram. Paradise sounds familiar. It may have been Paradise. Anyway, after many months of him being very depressed, and people had heard about this tragedy, and his bishop, who was actually from Brigham City, visited him quite often and got him a job helping to build a temple in Logan. And so he was one of the people that helped to build the temple in Logan. And as he was traveling back and forth, he would go and work for 2 weeks on and then come back. And they had a woman that would come and stay. I think it was a younger girl that would stay and take care of the young boy. But eventually, this bishop that was visiting him on a pretty regular basis encouraged him to see someone, and it was Susanna. And so Susanna Barker is a British girl who had been fresh off the boat as of like 6 months or so. And he was really reluctant. He continued to say no, 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 no. And then over the course of many months, he finally broke down and said, okay, I'll see her. They went out on a few, I guess, dates, and they hit it off. And he eventually proposed to her, and he had gotten to know most of the family as well. But when he did propose to her, Susanna said, I'm sorry that I can't answer you until I've talked to my sister. And he asked why, and she said, that's because I made a pact with my sister that if one of us were proposed to, that the other one would be married to that man as well. And that was Elizabeth, who was her sister. And so...
Now, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
That seems very curious to me. Did she make that statement because of the doctrine of polygamy, or was that, how did that come into her mind and into her heart? Do we know that?
I don't know for sure. I just assume that that is because the doctrine was being practiced in that time. So
Loved her sister and wanted to be with her.
yeah,
Especially if they came over by themselves.
yeah.
She wouldn't want to leave her sister alone.
I think it probably had a lot less to do with the doctrine than it did that they just had a strong friendship and wanted to be.
But it was going
together.
on, so it was not an out of the ordinary
Right.
thing, and so it was probably in her head and thought.
Yeah.
Right. It's probably a
We should do
combination of the both.
Yeah.
I mean, sisters today that are really close probably don't even think of that. But
Yeah.
because of the environment that they
Right.
were in, it was probably on their
Yeah.
mind. And anyway,
It's the only
that's,
conceivable way that a woman would even allow such a thing.
Yeah.
Somebody you loved who was really close to you.
but that's the way it goes. And in fact, what happened next was that he was pretty taken aback by that, was not on board with that. But after a few months of talking about it, he finally acquiesced, and he proposed to Elizabeth as well. And Elizabeth had a hard time with it, actually, because she knew that he was in love with Susanna, and so she actually, there's one record that says that she wanted to break the pact with Susanna, but then she prayed about it, and she said that she heard a voice saying, "Don't worry, he's yours as well," or something like that. And so she gained a testimony of it, and they were sealed together in the endowment house. This was before the Salt Lake Temple or the Logan Temple were finished. And so they were married, sealed in the endowment house by Joseph F. Smith. And so, so Joseph F. Smith is who sealed them in the endowment house, and that was in, I'm not sure exactly what the date of that was, but anyway, I'll get that to you guys. So they settled up in the Cache Valley, Bear Lake area, and I'm not sure exactly where they started. I know that there are records of it, I'm just not remembering right now. But ultimately, when the practice of polygamy was disbanded and the U.S. Marshals came in to start enforcing the law of monogamy, that's when, as you know, they split up the families. Susanna and their children stayed in the Bear Lake area near Charleston, and then Elizabeth and their family went to Star Valley near Afton.
Oh, and so did he stay with Susanna?
No,
Went back and
he
forth.
actually
Both of them,
stayed
but he had-
mostly with Elizabeth because they had...
She had more daughters, right?
Yeah, Susanna had
Mostly
9
sons.
boys and 3 girls, is that what it was?
Yeah.
9 boys and 3 girls, and then Elizabeth had kind of the opposite, where she had a ton of girls and a few boys. So Jacob would go over would stay in Afton most of his time. And the boys in Charleston would run the farm.
St. Charles.
Sorry, St. Charles would run the farm. And in fact, some of the boys, I read a few, there was indication that they would go to Afton to help as well. But there are lots of funny stories about him dodging the U.S. Marshals. Actually, there are 5 or 6 funny stories, but I'll just tell one of them. At one point, the U.S. Marshals came and found him in Afton, and they were going to serve him papers, and he heard about it. Somehow he got tipped off that they were on their way, and so he sent Elizabeth to the Star Valley Cemetery and said, "I want you to go and knit me, a scarf or something." And so she was like, okay. So she went and started knitting in the cemetery, and when the U.S. Marshal arrived and said, "I understand that you have 2 wives," or no, he said, "How many wives do you have?" And he said, 2. But one of them is in the cemetery right now. And the U.S. Marshal didn't say anything, and he left. And so that was just one of the stories. They have a bunch of other stories about the U.S. Marshals catching up with him, and he would somehow dupe them. Anyway.
But he wasn't lying.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about it.
Yeah. So just to kind of close off, this is all I'm going to share today, but there's a lot more detail in the histories that are available, but they're kind of spread out all over the place, and we need to do a big work of consolidating them. So I'm working on that, and hopefully later this year we'll have it. In the meantime, as I mentioned, I highly recommend that everybody get onto the Facebook group, because there are people on there that their Michelsons pop up on there all the time, and that I've never heard of before. And they talk about reunions for Joseph Michelson descendants or for ex-Michelson descendants, and it's really interesting to see how much is going on. And most interesting to me has been the pictures that they've posted there. Pictures come out of the woodwork of Jacob, Susanna, Elizabeth, Thomas, everybody, and it's really cool. So that's all I have to share. Does anybody have any questions? Or?
Do we have any idea the name of the person who was sitting at that table with him that told him I'm a Mormon and kind of, I mean, was that person sort of
First
an integral part of him? I stepped out. Was he sort of the person who brought Jacob into the gospel?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it'd be neat to know who that was because that's why we're members today. Is because of that
Yeah, that's great.
That's
friend.
true. There are actually other stories though that leave that person out that take it in a completely different direction. They
Okay.
talk about Jacob going to a bar and asking for milk, and everybody laughing at him and saying, "You must be a Mormon," and him saying, "What's a Mormon?" and then explaining that there were some elders that came through, and then him finding the elders.
Oh, so there's different.
There's different stories.
That could still be part of the story, really.
It could
And
be.
not contradict anything.
It's true. It's true. But there are lots of different
Something
stories.
about drinking.
But yeah, that would be
Yeah, he
interesting
was
to
a
know who
drinker
that
one
was.
way or another.
Yeah, we know him being introduced to the gospel had something to do with him drinking.
With liquor.
Hard liquor.
Now, in the pictures that I recall of Jacob, he seemed to be very tall, and his wives were very short. Do we know how tall he was?
Yeah, there is. I'm sorry that I'm not remembering, but there is actually a record of how tall he was. I'm pretty sure it was 6'2".
It's pretty big for a 3-pound baby.
Yeah. He must have been premature.
Danes are tall though.
Yeah.
And then is his, it was in Oregon, I think, is that still in the Post Science Center or FUA? It's still in the museum?
Which
That's
one?
what I heard it was.
The
The
Oregon?
organ that was at the Homestead.
When I went to BYU, the Harris Fine Arts Center on the campus there in the Bay has a museum.
Uh-huh.
And the organ is down there and it has a plate on it, donated by a family of Jacob Michelson.
Oh, really?
Well, who played it? Who played the
It was
organ?
in their house.
It was in there.
Their kids and maybe the wife.
I've never
It was
even
in
heard of
the- It was
that.
in the St. Charles house, and when we dispersed the stuff, that was obviously the most valuable thing, and so we decided we weren't gonna let any one family have it, we'd donate it. Grandpa asked me to be the executor of the estate, because he said he didn't trust any of the other, any of the other extended family, and this was after I was home and from school and everything, and so we went up there and had a dispersal, and the next most valuable thing was a really fancy clock that some people had said was theirs and other people said no, it's ours. And so I said, I know there's conflict, but we're going to put it on this table, and we're going to make all the 12 tables, I think, equal. And so that particular table didn't have as much stuff on it to try to balance it out. And then we had a raffle to see who drew first, and everybody supported that. And so some family got the clock, which everybody really wanted, and they put it in the cabin. And that night, somebody snuck in and stole that clock.
Probably a family member.
One of our family. And so I sent out a letter to everybody, and I said, somebody stole that clock, and I want everybody to know so they can't put it out in public.
You should have threatened to cut the clock down the middle.
You should have been there.
That sounds like a clock. Somebody.
So did you ever find out who stole the
Should I keep
clock?
going or kill
At
it?
least it was when I went there.
That's
Well,
funny.
and I would like to know a little bit more about the building of the home there. Did he build
He
that?
did. He built it with
He
his
built
own
that
hands.
home with his own hands. As I recall, it's a fairly good size.
Oh, yeah.
It's a two-story.
Have you been through it?
I think I was several years ago.
Summer and I were given a tour of it a few years ago. Were you with us when we did that?
I might have been. I
I
know
don't
I've
think
been
so. I
like
think
through
it
it
was
years
Did you
ago.
take pictures?
There.
It's what?
Or is that kind of...
I think that was pre-digital camera for us.
Hey,
And it was kind of a spur of the moment. We weren't really planning on it. But yeah, it's very solid, and I encourage you all to go. And Dennis, the guy that lives there right now, is very open to giving tours. I mean, it's got a big sign on the main highway, one of those brown signs that says historical marker.
Yeah.
So he's used to people coming and seeing. And when we said that we were Michelsons, they were really excited to show us. And so they let us in, and we went upstairs, downstairs, and
That's cool.
It's
That's
really
in
good.
St. Charles?
Did they show
Yeah.
you this? Did they show you the secret room?
yeah, upstairs.
No, it was
That had
downstairs.
the newspapers on the walls.
Yeah, maybe, was that upstairs? I
Yeah.
thought it was downstairs. But there was a room that they didn't even, Dennis Michelson, my distant cousin, didn't even know it was there until they got thinking about it. And I wonder if that's where they hid Jacob.
That's what he said.
Is that right?
He said that they thought that might have been hiding.
There was a room that was a secret room. I can't even remember how you got into it, but he.
It's almost like Anne Frank.
Wait, what was it? How did they hide their room?
I can't remember how they hid it, but it didn't have a regular doorway to it. You'd have to go. If you go and
It was like one of those special like bookshelf doors.
yeah, maybe it was. I can't remember, but they got thinking, well, now wait a minute. The house only has this big room, and there must be something in there. And so they kind of got into it and found it. And there was newspapers on the wall, but there wasn't any treasure or anything really significant in there, I don't think.
Hey, Jake.
That they told you about.
Huh?
That they told you
I thought it was logged in.
That they told me about. Maybe Dennis Michelson has something valuable.
A clock.
Yeah,
the clock.
I just realized I should probably just show you the Facebook group on here because it's got some
I
cool
love that.
pictures.
Yeah.
You can see what Jacob looked like.
You know, you can be very picky on who you're friends with. Just your kids.
It's right out in that hall.
I was afraid to go out because I'd get
We
locked
have a
out.
neighborhood.
Well, the door
very
across
So when
the hall
when
is
we're
so.
trying to get rid of stuff or giving stuff away or.
Or letting people know
People
about things
post-
going on.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay, so see, I'm part of this Jacob Michelson Descendants group here. And Amy Anderson is the one that I was talking about that is working on the, she's working on the full history. I'm trying to help her out on that. But I want to show you some pictures.
Some of these.
This is Jacob and Susanna and their children.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see it very well.
And in this picture, isn't Thomas one of the littler kids or something?
Yeah, maybe those are all boys. Oh, there's one girl in the back, right?
In the front too.
And one in the front.
So there's Jacob and this is Susanna, and you can
Look
see
at
they've
this
got
picture.
lots of boys there.
Looks like they have 10 boys.
So where is
Which was
Thomas
Grandpa?
in that?
I don't know which one Thomas is.
Janice, can you pick him out there?
He's gotta be right back here.
Wasn't he
You know,
the
he's the
fourth
second-
oldest?
He
Third
looks
of-
like that.
Isn't that him?
That's the one he looks
That
like.
looks like him.
That's where I
That's what it
remember him
looks like
being in the
you.
picture I've
I
seen.
mean,
That's weird to think the connection there because I broke his chair. Moving him. One time I was moving him with Dad and Uncle Dennis, and when he moved to one of the as a nursing home or something like that, and well, my dad said, "Don't be sure not to break that," and then I tripped and broke it, and I felt horrible. But I remember Grandpa Thomas sitting right there. It's weird just how you see these old pictures and you have a connection with these people. Yeah, I met
This
him.
is
Yeah,
Susanna.
That's
Wow.
Susanna.
I mean
Yeah.
probably a couple times, but I remember that.
Oh, that's Susanna?
Yeah, that's Susanna.
She looks so modern.
She is a mom. She kind of
She has a slight smile is what makes her look modern.
Yeah.
Back in the old times, they didn't smile.
Yeah,
There's
right.
Grandpa right up there in the front.
He's the one that has the big, no, Grandpa's in the back with the biggest hairdo.
Oh.
they created the one,
Yeah.
the tallest one.
Yeah, that's Grandpa, and he always says, I had a fine head of hair. He always said that.
That's the four sisters that married the four brothers.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that? Four sisters married four
I don't know
brothers.
who that is. We're getting be off the beaten path here.
Different families, of course.
Now, Amy Anderson's in Colorado, and that's a relative of ours that's done a lot of this.
Well, they didn't have 10 boys, so.
You'd probably like to be up where the girls were.
Hey,
Maybe
there's
they
sloppy
figured we
joes
needed
back there.
Everybody want to paint a sloppy Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, they will get
Oh, are you on the
And
I brought Diet Cokes for you,
Next is Sloppy Joe.
Michelson women. Because isn't that your drink of choice? You guys drink Diet Cokes? No?
My mom does. My mom.
I was thinking that.
That's right, she's in Colorado.
I'm a
I forgot
regular,
her.
I'm a regular girl, but my mom was on father's diet.
Adam is a
My
six,
dad
though,
was
we
diet.
probably stop.
I'm very excited.
Yesterday, I was at the doctor. One of my legal assistants trying to separate babies. I couldn't separate them, so she had to separate.
I get really embarrassed trying to write anything in front of somebody with handwriting.
Dennis, do you want more than a sandwich?
Well, maybe what's got there, a chip or two, or a little of that green salad.
Where did Aaron go?
I've had a little bit of trouble double hitting things when I.
Okay, so